Could the Steelers and Packers part ways with two talented quarterbacks they drafted? Will the Bills and Titans move on from two promising pass rushers? Will the Seahawks have room for Brandon Marshall on their Week 1 roster? NFL Nation reporters pick 32 veterans who might not make opening day rosters in 2018. AFC West, AFC South, AFC North, AFC East, NFC West, NFC South, NFC North, NFC East, AFC West. Denver Broncos offensive tackle Menelik Watson. The Broncos signed Watson last season with high hopes he would be the team's solution at right tackle. That plan did not work out, as Watson missed 9 games with injuries and struggled at times, especially in pass protection. When he was in the lineup, Watson's athleticism is clear, and he flashes potential. But Jared Veldheer is set to be the new right tackle, and the Broncos tried Watson at guard for much of the off-season program. If Denver believes one of its younger tackles, like Elijah Wilkinson or Cyrus Kouandjio, is ready to be the backup swing tackle, or that Billy Turner could be the swing player at guard and tackle, Watson's roster spot could be on shaky ground. Jeff Legwold. Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Frank Zombo. The Chiefs have Justin Houston and Dee Ford as their starting outside linebackers and drafted backups Tanoch Kpassagnon and Breeland Speaks in the second round in each of the past 2 years. The team might keep Zombo around because of his experience, but that may be a luxury they decide they can't afford. His contract calls for a base salary of $920,000. Adam Tyker. In every season since 1990, at least 4 teams have made the playoffs after not making the postseason the year before. The Texans are prime candidates in 2018. From contract negotiations to quarterback planning, here's a look at tricky personnel moves looming for all 32 teams. The Rams and Eagles were among the most active, and a handful of clubs have new QBs. Check your team's grade here. Los Angeles Chargers linebacker Kyle Emanuel, drafted in the 5th round in 2015. Emanuel has primarily been a starter the past 2 seasons. Emanuel played just 290 defensive snaps last season, and the Chargers selected outside linebacker Uchenna Nwosu in the 2nd round in 2018 because he offers more versatility as a pass rusher in obvious passing situations. Emanuel finished with 33.5 sacks in college for the Bison, but he has just 3 sacks in 3 NFL seasons. Emanuel, however, could stick around because of his ability to contribute on special teams. Eric D. Williams. Oakland Raiders wide receiver Seth Roberts. This is with a caveat. Of course, a newly acquired receiver Martavis Bryant is indeed slapped with a suspension by the NFL, as feared by the Raiders. Then Roberts' footing as Oakland's No. 3 receiver, behind Amari Cooper and Jordy Nelson, would seemingly be strengthened. Still, Roberts, who is entering his 4th NFL season as an undrafted player, has much to prove to new coach John Gruden and his staff after having consistency issues last season. Roberts signed a 3-year, $12 million contract extension with $6.45 million guaranteed at the start of training camp last season, and responded with 43 catches, on 65 targets, for 455 yards and a touchdown in 2017. The Raiders are 10-0 in games in which Roberts scores, but his relatively decent-sized contract could be on the market. Also, keep an eye on Pro Bowl left tackle Donald Penn, who is entering his 12th season, especially with Oakland using the No. 15 overall draft pick on Colton Miller. Paul Gutierrez. AFC South. Houston Texans guard Jeff Allen certainly wasn't guaranteed a starting spot entering the Texans' off-season program after he and the rest of the team's offensive line struggled last season. Houston attempted to fix that weakness by gutting the offensive line this off-season and adding 3 potential starters in free agency: tackle Chantrell Henderson and guards Zach Fulton and Senio Kelemet. In May, the Texans put Allen on the physically unable to perform list, making it more uncertain that he will be on the roster to open the 2018 season. The Texans have an out in Allen's contract this off-season, and he's owed more than $7 million in 2018, which would make him the team's highest-paid offensive lineman. One more reason the Texans could take a hard look at his roster spot. Sarah Barshop, Indianapolis Colts defensive end John Simon, who played outside linebacker in 2017, was one of the Colts' best defensive players last season. Despite missing 7 games because of injury, now he's joining a crowded defensive line after moving to defensive end in their transition to a 4-3 defense under new coordinator Matt Eberflus. Simon, entering his 6th season, hasn't played on the defensive line since he was in college at Ohio State. One of his biggest issues is that he's considered an undersized, 6'1", 250-pound, defensive end. "I hope I'm competing for a starting job," Simon said. "They want to make it very competitive. And as a player, as a competitor, that's what you want." Mike Wells, Jacksonville Jaguars offensive tackle Jeremy Purnell. The roster is pretty much settled, and Purnell is really the only notable veteran who fits here, mainly because of his age and the fact that the team drafted his eventual replacement. Purnell has played well the past 2 seasons when he wasn't bothered by an injury and is a big reason the Jaguars have cut their sack totals in each of the past 2 seasons, 34 and 24. However, the right tackle turns 32 in July, and the Jaguars drafted Will Richardson in the 4th round in April. Richardson worked with the 2nd and 3rd teams behind Purnell throughout OTAs, and it doesn't appear the Jaguars are going to give him a lot of first-team reps, if any. Purnell should be the starter in 2018, but that could change if he gets hurt or Richardson has a monster camp. Mike DiRocco, Tennessee Titans outside linebacker Kevin Dodd. Where is Kevin Dodd? Was one of the most popular questions among local reporters during the Titans' voluntary OTAs. The 2016 second-round pick has been a big disappointment in his first 2 seasons, but new coach Mike Vrabel seemed to give him a clean slate to impress in year 3 under a new regime. Dodd hasn't been around to prove himself much this spring, and the Titans drafted outside linebacker Harold Landry in the 2nd round to essentially become what Dodd hasn't, their next young, explosive pass rusher. Dodd has gotten bigger this offseason and appears to be more of a defensive lineman than an outside linebacker. Dodd declined multiple requests for comment from reporters during mandatory minicamp. Vrabel has been reluctant to criticize Dodd, but he did allude to conditioning being a reason they kept him out of some minicamp drills. Young, versatile outside linebackers like Aaron Wallace, Josh Caraway and Sharif Finch might make Dodd expendable. He isn't doing himself any favors and the Titans might soon decide it's time to cut ties with him. Cameron Wolfe, AFC North. Baltimore Ravens wide receiver Breshad Perriman. How did all 32 NFL teams fare this offseason? We evaluated their best and worst moves, whether they met their goals, and all the looming questions still to answer. Progress reports for every team. Sando grades from NFL executives. Perriman is perhaps the biggest first-round bust in team history, and he is due a $649,485 bonus on the 3rd day of Baltimore's training camp. That means the number 26 overall pick in the 2015 draft could be traded or released this summer. Baltimore added Michael Crabtree, John Brown, and Willie Snead, all of whom are ahead of Perriman on the depth chart. Perriman's career has been derailed by injuries, inconsistency and dropped passes, a habit that has continued in off-season practices. Jamison Hensley, Cincinnati Bengals defensive end Michael Johnson. The logical answer here would be former first-round pick Cedric Ogbuehi, who has lost his starting role to Cordy Glenn, but the Bengals would save money against the cap by releasing Johnson instead of Ogbuehi. Johnson, the Bengals' selection for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award in 2017, means a lot to the team. However, his snap counts have been falling, with the team using him a lot as a defensive tackle on 3rd down as opposed to on the edge. With the addition of Sam Hubbard, and young players like Jordan Willis and Carl Lawson needing to find playing time, Johnson might not have the role he once had. That could make him expendable. Catherine Terrell, Cleveland Browns defensive end Carl Nassib. Injuries to Myles Garrett and Emmanuel Ogbah meant that Nassib started 12 games in 2017. His most memorable play was when he lined up offsides in Chicago, negating an interception return for a touchdown by Garrett. Ogbah's return to health combined with the drafting of Chad Thomas puts Nassib, a 3rd-round pick in 2016, at risk of not making the roster. Pat McManaman. Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Josh Dobbs. The most clear-cut positional battle on the Steelers roster takes place at quarterback, where third-round rookie Mason Rudolph joins the fold. The Steelers have 4 quarterbacks for 3 spots, placing the onus on Dobbs to show a sizable jump in year 2. He's off to a good start in off-season workouts, throwing with confidence, but veteran Landry Jones might prove too valuable for a contending team unless the team creates trade value for him. Jeremy Fowler. AFC East. Buffalo Bills defensive end Shaq Lawson. The Bills' first-round pick in 2016 has thus far failed to emerge in the defensive schemes of either former coach Rex Ryan or current coach Sean McDermott. Comments from both Lawson and his coaches this offseason has made it clear he is at a crossroads with the team, which has prompted Lawson to shed extra weight and take a more disciplined approach to his game. The problem for Lawson is the Bills stocked up on defensive ends this offseason, signing former Redskins pass rusher Trent Murphy to a 3-year, $22.5 million deal while also bringing aboard Terrence Fader and Awa Odajawa. Once Murphy fully returns from a knee injury that kept him limited in practices this spring, Lawson will be competing for a rotational role, if not for his 53-man roster spot entirely. It also seems possible the Bills could trade Lawson after they dealt several draft choices by the Bills' former management, including Marcel Arias, Sammy Watkins and Reggie Ragland, last year. Mike Roddick. Miami Dolphins wide receiver Leon Carey. The Dolphins' third-round pick in 2016 was limited to 7 catches for 69 yards last season despite playing in 14 games. He has a chance to earn a role in a jumbled Dolphins wide receiver group that lost Jarvis Landry this offseason, but he must also contend with free agent acquisitions Danny Amendola and Albert Wilson, with Devontae Parker and Kenny Stills also in line for playing time, and 2017 7th-round pick Isaiah Ford catching ice this spring after missing last season with an injury. Carey must make an impression this August. Mike Roddick. New England Patriots running back Mike Gillislee. The Patriots had signed Gillislee to a 2-year, $6.4 million offer sheet as a restricted free agent last offseason, and he opened 2017 as the no-one option on the depth chart before losing the job to Dion Lewis in Week 6. The Patriots' locks at running back this season are ex-Buckhead James White and first-round pick Sony Michel, and the Patriots wouldn't have any dead money on their salary cap if they release Gillislee. He is scheduled to earn $1.9 million in base salary and count $2.1 million against the salary cap. It wouldn't be a surprise if he's not on the roster. Mike Rice. New York Jets linebacker Lorenzo Moldin. The former third-round pick flashed pass rushing potential as a rookie, 4 sacks in limited play, but he regressed in 2016 and missed last season due to back surgery. He still has a chance to salvage his Jets career, but it won't be easy as a classic tweener who lacks ideal explosiveness. Rich Cimini. NFC West. Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Bryce Butler. The 6th-year veteran signed with the Cardinals to be their WR2 behind Larry Fitzgerald, but a shaky offseason hasn't solidified Butler's job. If Butler can't secure that spot, he could find a place in the rotation. But the question will then become, will Butler be happy with that? Arizona brought back Greg Little for a tryout in minicamp, a sign that it feels depth is still needed at receiver. Josh Weinfuss. Los Angeles Rams defensive lineman Dominique Easley suffered a torn ACL during training camp last year, ending his 4th season before it began. The Rams sign Easley to a 1-year deal this offseason, with the hope that the former first-round pick in 2014 can return to form. But Easley, who had 3.5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles in 2016, is facing an uphill battle as he attempts to come back from a 3rd serious knee injury and is in a position group that includes All-Pros Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh and returning veteran Michael Bruggers. Lindsey Terry. San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Aldrick Robinson signed with the Niners in the 2017 off-season as a steady, reliable veteran who knew coach Kyle Shanahan's offense, and he went on to post 19 catches for 260 yards and 2 touchdowns, with Pierre Garçon returning from injury and the addition of second-rounder Dante Pettis and intriguing 7th-round Richie James. The Niners receiver group now looks pretty crowded. Robinson's still offers some veteran guidance and is a Shanahan favorite, but the numbers game could still leave him on the outside looking in. Nick Wagoner. Seattle Seahawks wide receiver Brandon Marshall. The one-year deal Seattle gave Marshall in May includes only $90,000 guaranteed, which is reflective of his age, 34, and uncertain health as he comes off surgeries on his ankle and toe. The Seahawks' ideal scenario would have the 6'5" Marshall getting back to full speed before the season and giving Russell Wilson the big target he lost when Jimmy Graham left in free agency. But if Marshall isn't progressing as well as hoped or if the Seahawks decide there's more value in keeping a younger receiver instead, they could move on relatively painlessly before the season begins. Brady Henderson. NFC South Atlanta Falcons guard Andy Levitre, who already took a pay cut, wasn't on the field much this offseason while recovering from triceps and knee injuries. He has been the starter at left guard the past 2 seasons, but the Falcons have to prepare both Ben Garland and Wes Schweitzer in case Levitre's body can't keep going at age 32. The Falcons signed veteran Brandon Fusco to step in at right guard. Vaughn McClure. Carolina Panthers defensive tackle Kyle Love. There's really no veteran in big danger of not making the roster, but let's just say one of the young tackles, Drew Dings, Kendrick Norton, Ashad Mabry, proves good enough to be a part of the 4-man rotation that begins with Kawandt Short, Dontari Poe, and Vernon Butler, that could make the 31-year-old Love, primarily an early down run stopper, expendable. He's in the last year of his contract and has a $1.3 million cap number that could be applied to extending other long-term players. David Newton. New Orleans Saints linebacker Manti Te'o had a good debut season with the Saints in 2017, returning from a torn Achilles to play in all 18 games, including the playoffs, and stepping up down the stretch after A.J. Klein went down with an injury. The Saints, however, added yet another inside linebacker when they spent big money on Demario Davis in free agency, so Te'o projects as a backup behind Davis, Klein and Alex Anzalone. And he doesn't bring added value on special teams. That would probably make him a weekly inactive, barring another injury. Mike Triplett. Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Charles Sims. The Bucs running back competition is just heating up, and a virtual unknown in rookie Sean Wilson could push veteran Sims out the door. Wilson, an undrafted free agent out of Duke, showed during minicamp that he has some solid hands and special teams ability. Considering the team resigned Sims later this offseason and it's only a 1-year deal, his roster spot is far from guaranteed as the Bucs' third down back, a spot that Jacquizz Rodgers could also hold. Jenna Lane. NFC North. Chicago Bears wide receiver Benny Fowler. The Bears signed a pair of wide receivers, Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel, in free agency and drafted Anthony Miller out of Memphis in the 2nd round. Fowler, and fellow veteran wideout Marlon Brown, faced stiff competition to make the roster. The Bears are also hoping for a bounce-back year from former 7th overall pick Kevin White, who further complicates Chicago's picture at wide receiver, if he stays healthy. Jeff Tekish. And Detroit Lions safety Miles Killebrew. The Lions drafted Tracy Walker in the 3rd round, resigned Tavon Wilson and have Glover Quinn and either Quandre Diggs or Wilson as likely starters. Killebrew, meanwhile, is entering his 3rd season and might be the 5th safety on the roster. He's talented and could serve a role in Patricia's defense, but there also might not be room for him, particularly since he has struggled in coverage during the practices open to the media this spring. He still has a real chance, but unlike in prior years, there's no guarantee Killebrew will be on Detroit's 53-man roster. Michael Rothstein. Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Hundley. How could a quarterback go from starting 9 games last season to possibly out of a job, even as a backup? For starters, he could fail to throw a single touchdown at home while throwing 7 interceptions in those games. Yes, Hundley kept the Packers' playoff hopes alive, barely, while Aaron Rodgers recovered from his broken collarbone, but by trading this offseason for former Browns starter Deshaun Keyser, The Packers sent the message that Hundley's performance wasn't good enough after spending 3 years in their system. Rob Demovsky. Minnesota Vikings defensive end Brian Robinson, the veteran edge rusher, took a $2 million pay cut to return to the Vikings for his 12th season and has logged a lot of reps this spring with the first-team D-line in place of an injured Everson Griffin. Along with Stephen Weatherly, Robinson played an important rotational role last season, 56.7% of defensive snaps. But given the expectation that younger linemen like Tayshaun Bauer will grab hold of a spot with the reserve unit, Robinson could see his playing time diminish further and have to battle for a job in training camp. Another veteran on the bubble is kicker Kai Forbath, who signed a 1-year contract extension this offseason with no guaranteed money. Minnesota traded up into the 5th round to draft kicker Daniel Carlson, who will compete with Forbath. Courtney Cronin. NFC East Dallas Cowboys offensive lineman Chaz Green has worked with the first team at guard for most of the organized team activities, with Zach Martin not in attendance, and has been fine, but he was drafted in the 3rd round in 2015 to be the right tackle of the future. He was given the left guard spot a year ago out of camp but was unable to hold down the job. Green played as the swing tackle for a good part of the season and struggled mightily against the Falcons, giving up 4 of the 6 sacks to Adrian Clayborn. The Cowboys signed Cameron Fleming to be the swing tackle this summer and drafted Connor Williams in the 2nd round to be the left guard, with Marcus Martin and Joe Looney as potential depth players. Todd Archer. New York Giants guard John Jerry reworked his contract this offseason and lost his starting job. The Giants now have Patrick Omameh and 2nd-round pick Will Hernandez entrenched as their starters. Even veteran John Greco appeared to be ahead of Jerry on the depth chart this spring. Jerry's place on the roster is in jeopardy. Jordan Raanan. Philadelphia Eagles running back Wendell Smallwood, the former 5th-round pick, has flashed at times over his first 2 pro seasons, but injuries and inconsistency have held him back. Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement and Darren Sproles hold the top 3 roles in Philadelphia. Smallwood will be fighting it out with the likes of Donnell Pumphrey and Matt Jones for a roster spot this summer. Tim McManus. Washington Redskins quarterback Kevin Hogan. The Redskins traded for Hogan in the off-season, giving them 3 quarterbacks. Hogan is a distant 3rd behind starter Alex Smith and backup Colt McCoy, so he'll need an impressive preseason to warrant a roster spot. He's learning a new system and adapting to new teammates, but it wasn't as if he made a strong case in the spring that he should be on the 53-man roster. Coach Jay Gruden went with 2 quarterbacks last season, though they wanted to keep Nate Sudfeld on the practice squad. Going with 2 passers allows the Redskins to keep an extra player elsewhere, and that might be necessary with the new kickoff rules that will highlight the need for smaller, faster